Hey, hi, hello, welcome to episode 77 of Trail Society, produced by Free Trail, brought to you by our friends over at The Feed. I'm Corrine Malcolm.
I'm Keely Henninger.
And I'm Hillary Allen.
And we are, I think actually, Keely, you've managed to make it home, but everyone else is still somewhere else in the world.
Yeah, I had a change of plans. I was going to go back to Park City, but then we realized this next weekend was like our only free weekend in the next 2 months. So we're like, let's just go back to Portland.
That tracks. Hillary, where are you right now?
Yeah, I'm still in Italy.
Nice. And is everyone as tired as I look and feel?
If you'd asked me yesterday, I'd have said
Maybe.
hell yeah, but I feel a little more recouped today. I didn't take the drive all in one go. I stopped in a very nice hotel and slept for like 11 hours yesterday. And then got in last night or last afternoon, yesterday afternoon. So I still
Nice.
can't speak clearly, but my tired barometer is a little lower than yours, maybe.
Yeah, no, I have been sleeping sort of here in San Francisco for a few more days, actually, just until tomorrow when this comes out, and then I will be bouncing north, hopefully trying to push all the way to like Bend before I make it home
Nice.
on the 4th. But yeah, Hillary, you just raced. You're still in Italy. Where are you to next?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean I feel a little bit groggy just from the whole like hype and still it's like traveling over here. Yeah, where am I off to? I'm in Italy for a little bit, actually off to the UK. There's a trail running festival. I know Hillary the Hillary Allen, as we know her on Instagram, Hillary Yang. She's going to be over there as well as Billy Yang. A couple other runners like Lucy Bartholomew. It's like a trail running festival in the UK. So I'm going over there to lead some runs and a talk, and then I will be in France for Brooks trail running camp, and then basically preparing for UTMB from there.
Awesome. So we've lost Hillary to Europe for the remainder of the summer season.
Yep, correct. It's a fun place to be.
Well, I guess here's a question for you. Can you order the feed to Europe, or are we smuggling you things?
No. So actually this is the good thing. I'm in the places where it's actually easier to send the feed. Spain, I think, is a tricky country for them to mail it to. However, I know the feed is actually launching in Europe. They do have a new distribution center. I don't want to missay it, but it is somewhere in Europe. I believe it's like maybe in Amsterdam. But yeah, it's going to be no problem. So maybe I think there's going to be some people actually at the feed for the UTMB week. So
Sick. So we have to give extra big love then to our title sponsor. That is the people over at the feed. I literally have a box that didn't quite make it. They were changing warehouses, didn't quite make it to my friend's house in San Francisco before I went up to Tahoe. But now I have goodies to take home with me. And again, if you want to try the feed, your one-stop shop for all your nutrition needs, you can do that over at www.thefeed.com/Trail Society, where you get a $20 credit every quarter, $80 of free snacks over the course of the year. Keely, what free snacks made your wedding to Western states back-to-back double successful?
Well, mine were not super new. They're all kind of the OG regular ones that I get, but I did get a couple shout outs at states from people telling me that they finally tried the waffles because they for a while were trying all the other waffle brands, like the little teeny waffles, and they were like, this just doesn't feel like the same thing. And they finally got like the actual waffles, the ones you put in your toaster. And they're like, oh, these are a game changer. Like literally, I can eat them right before a run and feel amazing. Never have stomach issues. A couple of people have done the gluten-free ones, say that those are even really good. So I feel like I just got a lot of waffle love the last couple of days. So I wanted to kind of highlight that because I feel like if anyone wants to send me recommendations, I'm in a little bit of a rut. I order the same thing all the time. So I haven't been nothing new for me lately.
Gotcha. Well, I'm actually very excited because once we finish this, I'm going to go for a run with a bunch of friends here in the Bay, and I'm going to need the waffles that are currently sitting in the box to my left. So I will be digging into those this morning. I think we should just dive right in. We've got a number of things to talk through today. Some kind of what have we been up to in the sense that we're part of an initiative that launched during Western states, but still has a ways to go as far as being like completely formed. Some like highlights and takeaways from the last 2 weeks of racing, and then talking about Hillary's race at Lavaredo, as well as what you and I both experienced at Western States, which was insanity, I'm pretty sure. So I think we should dive right in, and that is the Women's Trail Running Fund news, because I think that like the backstory has been a little bit lost in the excitement and hype around Western states. And so I just want to kind of set the stage for everyone with that. Hillary Yang and I reached out to one another after watching a number of running documentaries where women were kind of reduced to this 2D character, like the pretty blonde wife, the pretty blonde girlfriend, to like the male athlete who's like intense and focused and determined. And we were like, man, women's stories need to be told more. Women's stories from marginalized communities need to be told more, and they should be told by women as opposed to being told through the male lens, which happens really frequently. That led to conversations with people from the PTRA, the women's working group there, to try to create a kind of occasion, kickoff, momentum launch to create a fund that would allow both female creatives and female runners, not just professional female runners, but female runners broadly, to apply for grants for written projects, film projects, and photo projects so that overlooked stories would be told by other women as well. So that's the goal behind this whole thing, is to tell more stories. We kicked off with shirts at Western States that many of you saw, to highlight the 99 women at that race, with the idea that all those donations go to the creating of what I think is going to be a really cool initiative. Basically here to elevate all women on the trail, and that has to have intersectional components as well. We were supported on the back end by HOCA and by Trail Society, akin to the donations we gave last year to a number of organizations. We kicked in a contribution to get that off the ground as well, to allow all these donations to get to people like you that are listening who want to help share stories. So the plan is we're launching a advisory board, which will happen in the next couple of weeks alongside a website. That website will also kind of be the rollout for online orders so that you too can get a shirt. And then in the fall, we'll open applications for grants so that in 2025, many of you will hopefully get grants to tell your stories, no matter what community you come from. So that's what they're for. We're hoping that we can continue to do good work, but Trail Society was definitely very helpful in kind of that initial, the seed behind the seed to get things kicked off very quickly, going into Western states where all eyes are kind of on the trail running world for a very small window. But yeah, so
so many people want those shirts, Corrine.
We're hyped, and it's not perfect, and we know that we've got some stuff to do on the back end, but it should be really cool.
Yeah, and I feel like if you guys don't know what we're referencing, that's okay. Basically, Corrine launched shirts that said "Here for the women's race," and big red lettering. Some people made their own because they couldn't get the shirts. It was really cute, really cool, and there were tattoos, and everyone basically was like screaming that they wanted those shirts. To me, at least, like probably had at least 15 people ask me how to get them. And I said, listen to our podcast, and we maybe even got some new listeners out of it, because some people were like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, what's going on here? Yeah, they're super cool. And it's like we were inspired by the fact that, well, it came about actually because the Canyons coverage in part was also really bad of the women's race. And we're like, okay, change, like things need to happen at the front of the field, things need to happen in the mid and the back of the pack. Like, what can we do to tell these stories better? But yeah, we rolled out shirts. They were mega impactful, I think, all over the race course as well. It was really cool to see people rocking them on Saturday out there, crews, women wearing them, kids wearing them, men wearing them, medical volunteers wearing them, people at aid stations decked out in them. But yeah, we only made 300, and I was convinced that I was going to have to take some home. Like, I was like, there's no way we're going to sell all these. And we completely sold out in 24 hours on the ground. We didn't even make it to our third selling option. We sold them Wednesday night and Thursday morning, and they were gone, which is exciting. We're trying to get one over to Wales for Lucy, because there is, I think, one small floating around that's in my backpack, and I'm like, I can do this. I can get it to Lucy. But yeah, the goal is to create a legacy, essentially. So like create a fund that many people will benefit from. It's all like 100% of the donations are getting turned around to be redistributed effectively, which is kind of like what we've been doing with the podcast too. Like we aren't making bank over here. We've been like trying to utilize what the podcast does bring in to support causes that are near and dear to all of us, including like I think continuing to find a way, hopefully, to work with like the World Trail Majors to help fund an athlete for each of those events that comes from a marginalized community. So I don't know, we're here's the thing. It's like I want more people on the start line. I want more women on the start line. I want more women of color on the start line. I want more people from the LGBTQ community on the start line. Like I think we all are working towards a common goal, and the shirts are just a very small piece of the puzzle that made a very big splash. But it's not like none of us are getting rich off of it. Our goal is to turn those funds into women's stories. So keep your eyes here, keep your eyes on our social media, keep your eyes on the PTRA social media. We will be rolling stuff out in the next couple of weeks. A lot of conversations have to be had between now and then, but ideally we're bringing stuff to UTMB in August and working on launching some like put together drops online, which will continue to be the evolution of this thing. So that's my soapbox for the Women's Trail Running Fund and here for the women's race. Yeah, we're very excited about it.
Proud of you, Corinne.
Thanks. I haven't slept in like a week, so I'm really excited for the next 2 days of like driving back to Seattle where I don't have to talk to anyone. So we're gonna make it, team.
That's good. This seems so cool to watch. Such a cool initiative.
Yeah, we're making some in French for August. I'm really excited. Keely, hit us with your inspo deep dive kickoff here.
Sure. Yeah, we have a really cool question come in from a listener that has kind of two parts to the question. And I think we'll all kind of resonate with the first question. And then the second question hits close to home for me. It covers some research I did back in 2015 and really highlights some of the research of the guy that I was working with. So yeah, I'll go into it. But basically, somebody said, "Hi, I have a question for you wonderful, smart ladies. I want to understand why my heart rate power hiking as hard as I can up super steep gradients versus when I'm running super easy on flats is higher or is lower. For some context, I live in Squamish, BC. I started road running a few years ago and I've just recently participated in a local Queen of the Hill challenge where you time yourself hiking up some of the steepest trails in the area. We're talking 700 meters of elevation and 2.5K type of steep. That is very steep. I've been giving it my all, unable to talk at the top. I'm breathing so hard, but my heart rate average is around 110 to 120. My easy run is usually 125. I can very easily talk at this pace. I've been told it's because my watch is inaccurate, but I wear it the exact same way on these challenges as I run. So even if the readings are off, the general trend should be the same, correct? I'm going to pause it here. That friend is probably right. I'd say the thing that's different between running and walking, and feel free to chime in, guys, is that sometimes because of the cadence of running, your cadence is faster. It will pick up a higher heart rate. Whereas when you're walking, your cadence is lower. So it could be picking up that as a lower heart rate. Either way, if you can't talk, your heart rate is not 110 to 120. Again, yeah. I'm not a doctor, but that seems very unlikely. But so I think it probably is some of that wrist-based heart rate inaccuracy. It's very common. Nobody's really crushed that yet. There's a lot of people wearing the new Coros band that goes around the arm. There is some accuracy there. A chest strap is also really accurate. So if you want to get more accurate readings, I would just suggest to switch to one of those. The wrist base has just notoriously been bad. Again, there's so much jostling at the wrist that really confuses the algorithm. Instead of thinking it's picking up the acceleration of the blood pulsing, it's actually picking up the acceleration of your running.
Yeah, it's called cadence lock. And it happens all the time. And I think if you have darker skin or if you have a small wrist, it's really hard to get good like lockdown of that watch. And so you get cadence lock running and hiking. You can actually do the same thing with the armband, but if you wear the armband tight enough, which is uncomfortable for people initially, it actually does do, I think, a pretty good job at this point, having seen a lot of athletes' data on the back end. And for many people, it's more comfortable than a chest strap, and they're very affordable as well. And they pair with like I use a Garmin watch, but I pair Coros armband to it, and it works super well. So I'm thinking your friend is also probably right on this one, because my guess is we can get that heart rate very high.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of second part of her question, she Googled some of this because she was just a little confused, and she found a paper that said gradients more than 15.8%. are more efficient to walk or power hike rather than run. This is actually my paper. And so she was wondering, like, why is that a case? Why is that the case? Like, why is hiking easier than running at those higher inclines? But I thought it would just be a decent time to like back up a little bit there, to kind of talk everyone through like the very basic differences between walking and running, and then why or when it is more efficient to walk and run. Obviously, acknowledging that everyone is very unique and that there could be a grade at which Corrine can hike more efficiently than I can, and I'd actually be better off running. But there is like kind of like a good guideline where it's like, hey, no, there is going to be a time at which running is just less efficient than walking.
Yeah. And then Hillary can just run up everything based on what I've experienced from going on the UTMB route with her.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I guess just starting with the basics, like when it comes to walking typically requires like less energy than running at like slower speeds, right? So like you're walking around, you're not expending a ton of energy. If you were going to try to run at that slow speed, that would feel super awkward. So I feel like aside from like the really scientific heavy reasons for all of this, you can just think about how awkward certain things feel. And then if you want to think about when a pace for running is probably more efficient than walking, if you're like on a treadmill and you're like upping, and it's like walking is really easy, you're going to get to a pace where like walking doesn't feel easy anymore and you're going to want to run. That's kind of like your unique transition. It's typically around a 13.5 minute mile, but that's where energy wise running is going to be more efficient. And really why that is like your running form typically utilizes a lot more tendons or like free energy than walking. So when you are hitting those higher speeds, you're actually able to use some of the energy from the tendons instead of just walking, where walking is a lot more like of a stationary movement and not using those tendons quite as much as running.
Springs,
Again,
baby.
yeah,
it's all about
no
the springs
and walking. I'll save you guys from talking too much into the science of all of that. But basically, if you think about those two kind of transitions, that's like the difference there. And then yeah, springs, energy saving by those tendons is really kind of why the difference exists.
And then I'll just add, I guess, that you can get a lot more efficient at hiking by doing it. That's why like Nordic skiers are a great example of that. They do a lot of ski walking and they are very, very good walkers, power walkers, hikers, whatever you want to call it. It's because they actually utilize that as a form of locomotion and training. Practice it, babies.
Like anything, practice makes perfect. So then when we're thinking about running and walking, the cool thing about trail running is that it throws a lot of variables at us. And like actually when we're running on a trail, it's actually most likely more energetically demanding than running on a flat terrain, because running on uneven surfaces requires a lot of ancillary muscles to fire so that we're stabilizing. Running on uphill requires a lot more energy to move that center of mass up the hill. So there's a lot of parts of trail running that make running harder too. And so when I was in Boulder in 2015, I got to work with Nicola Giovanelli. He now is kind of the guru in like running versus hiking and running versus hiking with poles. He's kind of put his whole postdoc into this realm. And so if you really are really nerdy, go look him up on PubMed, read all of his stuff. It's very fascinating. But his very first study he did in Boulder with me and Dr. Crom, and we basically looked at runners running between 9.5 degrees and 40 degrees, which 40 degrees is super
it's vertical.
steep.
It's virtually vertical.
And the treadmill we built was super fun project. And we had to put skateboard tread on it because it was so steep that people would just slide off. But basically what we found as we kept the same vertical speed constant, once people got to that 16-degree mark, walking was actually much more advantageous than running. And so basically what that means is that if you were running at that 16-degree mark at that speed, again, it's all relative to this speed, so it could vary based off other speeds, you were 8% less efficient than if you were hiking. And putting that into context is if you think about that Nike Vaporfly, that was like a 4% increase in running economy, where it made it 4% easier. It'd be like wearing a double of those. And that's how like advantageous hiking is at those really, really steep inclines. And so basically, one thing that I think we would recommend to all runners is to do a lot of experimentation on yourself. Go out on trail runs and do some hiking at certain speeds, do some running at certain speeds, and maybe get a little more reliable of a heart rate monitor and see how it impacts you and see how you feel. I think a lot of us can tell when we're working harder than other times. And so really just see like where your like limit is. And typically it feels more awkward to do the thing that's less efficient, similar to the treadmill where you're trying to walk, all of a sudden you need to run. Typically on those steeper climbs, you might be running, all of a sudden you're like, I can't run this anymore. That does not feel good. And that might be where your hike transition is more efficient at that current speed. So again, we'll link a lot of these papers in the show notes, but really good questions. I think it's a super fun area to nerd out about. There's a lot more studies going on longer distances to see like how running versus hiking versus pole hiking impact mechanics and energy cost. And so, stay tuned on that and feel free to read some of those articles we link to. So thanks for the question.
Speaking of hiking, there's a new Colorado Trail FKT set this past week. Just happened. 490 miles for those uninitiated into the Colorado Trail. First person ever under 7 days, Kyle Curtin, completes the trail in 6 days, 15 hours, and 8 minutes, which is very, very fast. I know that there's some guys that are going to go after it this fall, like in August and September. And then I don't know, I really want Courtney to go after the Colorado Trail again. 'Cause it's like the one thing that's really eluded her thus far. She made an attempt back during the pandemic and had to stop partway through because she got really bad bronchitis. So I'm anticipating we might have a woman under the 7-day mark in the next couple of years as well. I want to run down a couple of the European results from the weekend that included the 90K at Marathon du Mont Blanc, as well as the marathon distance there, which is the next stop in the Golden Trail World Series. The Russian duo, my teammates who now have permanent resident status in Andorra, which allows them to actually travel freely in Europe and race in races like UTMB, who still had bans for athletes like Dimitri and Ekaterina. They won the 90K, a joint couple win in 10:44 and 12:40, respectively. On the Marathon du Mont Blanc side, which is always a fascinating race. Eloise Eloise won the race in 3:30, just 46 seconds ahead of Remy Bonnet, which is nasty.
Whoa.
Like what a nasty close battle there. I do believe it's one of Remy's first races back from the ski season. And then Roberto De Lorenzo finished in third. On the women's side, Judith Wider won in 4:11. Like, again, kind of close contention over Madalena Flori, who kind of came onto the scene last year towards the end of the Golden Trail World Series. Super, super talented. And then Yao Miao finished third. So great battles on the Golden Trail World Series. The North American Golden Trail Series kind of got underway in a big way with the Broken Arrow Sky Race, where it was the Vassier Mountain Running World Cup. So we had the Kenyans that are supported by like Patrick and Judith and Philemon, all over to race. Patrick and Judith, not Judith, Joyce. Sorry, I've got Judith on my brain, and I wrote Judith twice in the notes. But Patrick and Joyce, Joyce and Giro, won the VK and the 23K. We asked Joyce after the VK on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was that? And she said 5. And we were like, dang. Like Joyce is coming for all of us. But it was cool because in the 23K, she had an epic battle with Tabor Hemming over the first bit of the course, where she looked back and saw Tabor and was like, no, and like had to dig really deep. Tabor ultimately got overtaken by Jade Belsberg, who finished third there. On the men's side, Eli Hemming put in a really good battle with Patrick Philemon. Patrick's teammate finished third. And then Jim Walmsley and Anna Gibson jumped into the VK, both finishing second. Jim using it as a tune-up for Western States, and Anna Gibson using it as an opener for her 1,500 meter at U.S. Olympic trials on the track. She did not make the final in the 1,500. She made it through the semis, ran well in the semis, but not quite enough to make it to the final, which included 4 Olympians. The final for the 1,500 was bananas. So really cool to see Anna and Jim both on the VK. And then in the 46K, Toni McCann made her debut on U.S. soil. She was here to pace Ingvild for Western States. Won the 46K, and then David Sinclair flexed exactly how good he is, winning the men's race in stellar fashion. And really, like, this year, all the races felt very elevated. The 46K, which oftentimes isn't quite as competitive, had really deep fields. Cool. And then they added an 18K this year for the first time, which goes along with their 11K and their Iron Face Challenge, which is the Via Ferrata. It was a super cool weekend. I got to meet members of the advisory panel that Broken Arrow has put together, including Run Club leader from SoCal, Priscilla Rojas, who I'm like so excited to do work with in the future. And then finally got to meet in person One-Armed Danny. That's her Instagram handle. Adaptive athlete advocate and Paralympian Danny Arovich was there. And I'm really excited to do, we're going to do some stuff with her. I think Hillary's been trying to get us to do stuff with Danny for more than a hot second now. And she is so rad. So really cool work that she's doing with the Golden Trail World Series and with Mammoth Trail Fest and just really working hard for adaptive athletes. So they're going to be cool people to have in our corner. We got to go to Lavaredo next, where not Keely. Keely did not race. Keely basically raced at Western States, but did not race. Hillary was over at Lavaredo. Hannes Nomberger won for the third time there, which is nasty. 3 minutes ahead of Tom Evans. Yannick Noel finished in third. The 120K has kind of like been the staple of the Lavaredo race for a long time, but the shorter distances are being built up there, I think, in a big way. Rosanna Butcher won the women's race by a lot, like 70 minutes, over, I think, two Italian athletes, or an Italian athlete and a German athlete, Giada Turini and Michaela Wolf. The 50K was also hotly contested, but it was just like kind of chaos this weekend. And then obviously Hillary ran the 80K. So we're going to turn our attention there, I think. We're going to turn our attention to the 80K at Lavaredo, as well as Western States, the biggest 100-mile race on North American soil. Probably the most competitive 100-mile race of our calendar season, particularly in North America. So we're going to dive straight into it. So I'm going to start, I guess, we're going to go to Europe. Keely, we're going to go right over to Europe to where Hillary was doing battle in Cortina, effectively, running her super gutsy 80K. Hillary, you've been over there for the 50K a couple times. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, I've had the pleasure of racing the 50K 3 different times. It was one of my first international races, and then kind of stapling, coming back from injury, I would return here. I originally signed up for the 120K, but could never do it because I had been injured. And so this year was special because I got to do the 80K, which is a new distance that they've added. And it's basically the first 30K of the course is different every year because they start in a different city in the heart of the Dolomites. So it's pretty cool. So I got to experience a new part of the Dolomites that I haven't run in before.
It's super cool to have you back over there racing in Cortina. Mm-hmm. It sounds like that you went out really gutsy, that you like threw yourself into the fire from the gun. Tell us a little bit about kind of being back out there again and what it felt like to put it kind of on the line.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if I needed to do that, but maybe I needed to do it for like an emotional thing. Because Transvolcania, I had a tough race there, and I have just been struggling with coming back from this really interesting and challenging ankle injury. And I think actually my training has been in a really good space. I've felt like a lot more confidence getting back into training after Transvolcania. So, and I think maybe I just was feeling good from the gun. And so then I decided, and it was actually really exciting because, I hadn't actually raced. I'd raced some of these women before, but I hadn't really raced any of them. But looking at their results, they're super strong, like European runners. And some of them definitely cross-country skiers. You could tell with their efficiency power hiking. But it was actually really cool that we were all racing for the gun. There was a group of, I think, 8 of us that were all pretty close together throughout the first 55K. It was a group of kind of 4 or 5 of us that were pretty close. And then the rest of the women were not that far back. So it was actually pretty cool. So I think I maybe it was exciting to just, be in the mix. And, but I think, maybe it wasn't as hot as it was at Western States, but it was still it's been very humid and rainy here. And so and then it was very sunny. And so I think maybe the heat and that got the best of me. And so I ran a really good 55K, but maybe I thought coming here, I was like, I'm so used to running the 50K at Cortina that maybe I was like, I just raced that. I forgot that I had another 30K to go.
Yeah.
So
What did you do when the wheels came off there? Because it's like you're in it, you're in it, you're in it, you're in it. And then it's kind of like small implosion. Like
yes.
What did you tell yourself at that point?
Basically, I felt like I was watching myself implode, but even when that happened, I was still able to maintain a really positive mindset and almost sense of humor about it, and just think to myself that, like, of course, you want things to go perfectly. I want things to go well, not perfectly, but I want things to go well. But to me, it was a really great opportunity to learn from, what was happening, and so I kind of kept that mentality and tried to keep finding a way to move forward. Also just kind of like laughing at the ridiculousness of how like fast things can go downhill. And of course it's, discouraging, but I think that's something I love about this sport. And it's something that keeps me coming back, is that, I could have so many great races and experience, we all can. And then you can have some bad races. And I think I'm in this, I've kind of had that for, the past couple ones, but I still am excited to train and prepare. I know I have a big base of fitness, and I'm excited to use it once it all comes together. It's harder and harder for it to come together perfectly when you have a bad day.
I think we learn a lot more from races that go off the rails, right? And so I'm wondering, kind of to wrap up the Lavaredo experience, what are things that went well? And then what are things that you're hoping to capitalize on as you work to kind of put the final touches on things building towards UTMB?
So the mental piece is something I'm going to continue to prepare just as much as the physical. I think it's just equally as important, and that went really well for me. Just keeping a positive mentality no matter what happens. And I think then just not continuing to beat myself, just forget about it and move on to the next thing. Hiking specificity for UTMB. I'm still really excited to try my best at that race, and give it another shot. Maybe not start as fast this time. Definitely not start as fast this time.
Lessons learned we're going to take to UTMB. I freaking love it. Speaking of lessons learned, Keely, you ran almost 40 miles with Rachel Drake. What a freaking race.
Yeah. I mean, Western States was absolutely insane. But yeah, I got to the pleasure of pacing Rachel for, it was like almost 38 miles. But yeah, it was super fun. I mean, I definitely got worked on that, 38-mile run. During it, I had all sorts of emotions because I kind of did every single thing that has gone wrong for me in every single year of States, aside from dislocate my shoulder. Like I twist my ankle really bad, mile 2. And Rachel goes, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yep, it's fine."
It's like Chris Hollis picked up Esther Chillog at Forest Hill, and apparently she started vomiting and he fell all within 10 minutes of them running together. And I was like, "Oh man, you guys really pulled it together for third."
Yeah. And then her stomach, we were troubleshooting her stomach and just a lot of stuff for her. As the pacer, you're always thinking about your runner, which I try to tell pacers not to do. Think about your runner, but also think about yourself. To the point where, 2 hours in, I'm like, "Oh, I've drank half of a bottle. Okay, we're going to be struggling." Proceeded to then have all of my own stomach issues after hers were resolved, and just literally carried cans of ginger ale the rest of the race.
Oh my goodness.
And then just completely was struggle busting. But, it's like almost, I was telling JT this the other day, it's like almost a really good exercise for me to almost like revisit a course that's mentally and emotionally extremely tough for me right now, have all of the things repeat themselves, but have no reason to fall victim to them. I literally couldn't be like, "Oh, I need to stop," or "I need to slow down." It was like, nope, just keep on going and troubleshoot and realize that you can troubleshoot and keep pushing and push someone to keep going. And we were hauling, she was running so very fast. We got thrown all sorts of curveballs. We couldn't get our crew at Green Gate, so then we didn't get headlamps, which, ding number 1, we should have sent me with backup headlamps regardless.
Yeah, so send someone to the river. It's just...
Yeah, they couldn't get to the river in time. But we were in the weird window where we were getting there basically too soon for anyone to get there on time. But like,
Yeah, Becca Wendell's crew had to like run down the road.
Yeah. Anyways, we couldn't get headlamps. So then with 2 miles left, I'm running with my phone light as our headlamp, right to the side of Rachel through all sorts of brush and probably poison oak and like tripping and like trying to get it so we can keep moving fast up those stupid climbs that get you to Pointed Rocks. And then no joke, like 50 to 100 yards from Pointed Rocks, we're hauling because we see Leah's headlamp behind us. And she's like, what is this little animal running? And I'm like, look around her. I'm like, Rach, that's a skunk. Like, you gotta get out of the way. She goes, but I can't slow down. And just like sprints past the skunk, proceeds to get skunked. I like slow down a little. Luckily, by then she can use some of the light from the aid station to see. So I don't need to be like right next to her. I skirt around. The skunk had gone into the bush. We get into the aid. I'm like, we just got skunked. Like,
yeah, Matt Mitchell jumped in front of the skunk for Leah. Same thing, like just ahead of you guys. Like, it was
absurd. And so Rachel luckily then gets her headlamp, gets Marianne. We switch pacers. They sprint out of there, proceed to run one of the fastest times from the river to the track of the history of the race, and holds off charging Leah and charging Priscilla. But like, it was insane. Like, we were running so hard and we're still like getting caught by people. And it was just like such an insane race to be a part of, to see everyone have their shit together so well that like they're running that fast at the end of the race. It was really, really cool. But yeah, the funniest part of that whole thing, and then we'll kind of dive into the rest of the race, was I get to the finish, like we get there barely in time to see her finish. You know, she comes into the finish. The first time she sees me, she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you got skunked. And everyone's like holding back laughter because like you can smell Rachel like smells like a skunk. And I was
like, it wasn't me, babe. It was you.
It wasn't me. I'm so sorry. It was you. It was really cool to watch her push so deep. Like, she is so tough. And for her to execute that well on her first 100, where, you know, she came into Forest Hill like as she wanted, really calm, top 10-ish, but like wanting to hunt, and that is exactly what we did. It was really cool to witness that.
It was cool, and there was very limited carnage. There was, I think we had 3 women drop from the women's elite field. Annalie and Lin Chen. Lin Chen dropped in 3rd, which is a real
Lin Chen
bummer.
Was so strong.
She was so strong. Her entire foot was a blister, and it had started to peel off at her heel.
Yeah, it was almost like what happened to me at Thailand. It happened to her here.
Yeah, she had to get carried out of the aid station because she couldn't walk on it anymore. It was super, super nasty. My friend and podcast listener Keely Blevins was working medical there and got to touch it and witness it. And she said it was she said it was very, very bad, I think was the direct quote from Keely. But yeah, very limited. So the two the Chinese athletes, Annalie and Lin Chen, unfortunate drops. Particularly in a podium position that's so brutal. And then Elsie Davis from the UK also was a drop on the women's side. Jeff Colt was kind of the only notable drop on the men's side, but quick kind of like overview of what happened, just like very briefly, results kind of style. Jim Walmsley takes the win after an insane battle with Rod Farvard. Jim was like, they kept attacking me all day. Like, it was so hard. Like, he picked up a pacer with 6 miles to go at Pointed Rocks just because he was like, he needed it. He's like, Ben, get in here now. And like, Ben jumped in and ran with him. It was kind of intense. This is Rod's 4th appearance there, and it's his best appearance yet. Hayden Hawks in 3rd. It was a sprint finish on the track, which I called. I said this is going to happen. Dan Jones moved up 1 spot to finish 4th. Caleb Olson has the fastest debut Western States as a debut 100 of any man any man ever. John Albin also debut official 100 miler in 6th. Tyler Green in 8th gets the Masters record, which he's like, can we not publicize that, because I don't feel that old. I want the win. Chen Zhisheng in 8th, John Ray in 9th, Chris Myers in his debut 100 in 10th. On the women's side, Katie Scheid, frickin' domination. Yeah. So insane. But in debut Western State in number 2, best debut Western States ever. 3rd fastest time in history. Hu Jiazhang of China, Hoka athlete, finishes in 2nd, like well ahead of a chase pack of Esther Chilog, Emily Hawgood, Ingvild Kaspersen, Ingvild's debut 100. Eden Nilsson in 6th, breaking the Masters course record by like 45 minutes.
Sub 17. Crazy.
Yeah, sub 17. Heather Jackson gets it done in 7th. Rachel Drake, debut 100 mile in 8th. Priscilla Forgy unsponsored in the top 10 in 9, and then Leah Yingling getting her third top 10 in 10. So there's some hits I want to cover here. In the men's race, 4 internationals and 6 Americans. Women's race, 6 internationals and 4 Americans. Masters course records fall with both Tyler Green in 15:05 and Ida Nilsson in 16:57 or 56. We had 6 men under 15 hours and 6 women under 17 hours. The women's top 10 became the fastest top 10 ever, which has happened every year since 2018. This year's 10th place finish, where Leah also set a PR, running 17:33. That's 37 minutes faster than last year's 10th place finisher. It's so stupid. For example, and the men's is similar. I just don't follow the men's top 10 times as closely as I follow the women. Bad commentator, Corrine. But Adam Peterman, his winning time from a couple of years ago would have been 10th this year, which is just like how the sport is trending. Katie, Fuzhou, and Esther run the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fastest times ever. The men's podium is all under 14:30, and there was a sprint for 2nd and 3rd. Caleb Olson's 14:40 becomes the fastest Western States debut ever. I think Tom Evans in 14:59 had been the previous best debut at Western States, so Caleb crushes that. The men's 1st through 10th was separated by only 65 minutes. Blake Slatengren misses a top 10, finishing 11th. One of Hillary's Brooks teammates by like less than a minute, which was devastating after closing. Like he was 10 minutes out of the top 10 with like 10 miles to go, and he closed. The women's top 10 was separated by 1 hour and 47 minutes from 1st to 10th. But if you look at 2nd to 10th, it was just 73 minutes. So we had, a 30+ minute lead of Katie out front. So the 2nd to 10th is actually very tight.
Yeah. 3rd to 10th is even tighter.
Yeah. It's like, because Fuzhou had a good gap as well. Yeah. So just like tight, intense racing all day long. Some movement, but no attrition, basically. Which is just like freaking nasty. I haven't really fully comprehended what happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
Like this is like
Jim only won by 10 minutes.
Never, like that's so tight for Jim.
Never happened for Jim. Yeah. And the fact that like he was basically didn't make a move to even gap Rod until 84 or something. Rod said Jim made a big move and then he couldn't hang, but like insane.
Yeah. Rod was like slowly, I get to see him tonight. Rod was like slowly falling apart. And Jim took a lot of time in aid. Jim like was having foot problems and he changed shoes and socks 4 times, which is like never happened. So apparently they came into Green Gate together and then Rod left in 20 seconds and Jim was there for 3 minutes type of thing. So it's like he took a lot of time in aid, but Dylan and I kept commenting on this on the live broadcast by saying, last year felt like the 4-minute mile mark was broken, i.e. Courtney and Katie just, Esther Chulog in 3rd was under Ellie Greenwood's old time. Just
it's
stupid.
Like it gave everyone confidence. Now it's like, oh, actually that's not an elusive barrier anymore. Like you're gonna break 16:40, we can do it. It's so cool.
Yeah, now if you want to be top 10 at Western States in the women's race, your splits better be 17 to 17:30.
Yeah, or faster. It's like almost like we don't even know anymore. It's like, what's next year? Everyone's sub 17. It's like you can't really go by splits anymore. You got to be like, what am I need to run just really true to myself. And if that's really above what I thought I was running, then I'm just going to try to hang because it might be what I need to do to get top 10.
It's the basement has been elevated, right? It's like you can't get away with a 20-hour finish. You can't get away with an 18-hour finish. No. It's the gals that finished just outside the top 10. I think so my time there in 2018 was 20 hours even, basically. And that was like standard. That was like fast for 10th at Western States.
This year, like granted, was a little cooler, but not that much cooler.
It was pretty standard Western States. Way cooler than 2018. 2018 was a hot year.
2019 was also 2021 was also super hot.
Yeah. So we're seeing this evolution independent of the temps, basically.
Totally.
Ugh.
Like for Katie to run 15:40 this year, again, the snow did slow people down a lot last year. I think that needs to be taken into account, but I feel like her time this year is like just on par with Courtney's from last year, given the temps.
Yeah, she got 12 to 15 minutes, I think,
on the snow.
And then, but she was as far as she was well up on Courtney's time. The bigger thing too that was more impressive, even not in comparison to Courtney's time, Katie ran an hour faster than she did last year. And much of that, like the 30 of that minutes came in like the back 25 to 30 miles.
In a hotter temp than last year. Yeah. Really freaking impressive.
Just, yeah, it felt unreal to watch it. And it was, yeah, I mean, to see 6 internationals, which reminds me of 2021, actually, to see 6 international women in the top 10 was super, super cool. And I hope that many of them come back next year.
Totally. I know. And I think one thing that I noticed is that like, there's no longer like, again, there are some people who blow through the aids and then they pay for that later. But I think that the amount of diligence and like strategy people are implementing now in their fueling, in their cooling, in all of these strategies is just making the race so much faster and have so much less attrition because they're actually taking it so seriously. And so now it's really just like, who is the fittest? It's not like who
is the smartest,
who actually cools off. Yeah. It's like, no, everyone's doing that. Everyone has the hat, has the buff, has the arm sleeves. Like, it's so cool.
Talk to that a little bit because you were out there on the course. I was sitting in a booth at the finish line I talked for 22 hours over the 31-hour broadcast, I'm pretty sure, including sprinting around the track with Will Barkin, who just missed the time cutoff, who's one of my athletes, 30 seconds, 30 for the finish. It was devastating. Gosh. But let's talk a little bit about what you saw out there from anyone in the race, as far as like, what did you pick up on at aid stations, as far as like, what are people doing well, and where did you notice anyone or any like general trends of people not doing something well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still this notion that you have to go through the aids quickly. And I think time and time again, we see the Katie Scheids, the gyms actually sit down, take their time at the aids, and it does pay off. Granted, they're not staying there for 5-10 minutes, but they are just like being calm and taking their time. And I think as I saw people do that, those people were more successful than those who ran through the aid, maybe like did some unnecessary movements, didn't stop and cool off. Like those people, like where maybe they could have been first, were maybe third or fifth or 10th or dropped even further back. And so I do think that like, while people are still figuring it out, there are still some people who are maybe right on that line where they're like, ooh, maybe I can save a couple minutes here. And I think that's still not the case, especially in a hot year. And I think those who took the hot year seriously, even though it wasn't like the hottest year, still kind of like were victors in the end.
Yeah, it was like, take the time that you need. Like I was really, again, like Jim took a lot of time at aid.
Yeah.
I also loved the like, but he was efficient. Like he came in shirt off, ready to dump it, ready to get a brand new cold soak down shirt put on. Like we saw Katie move from pack to handhelds to pack to ice hat to handhelds, really kind of utilizing different systems throughout the course of the race. I thought that was really cool. We saw people, utilizing that bathroads section to get more ice on them, for example. It felt like Devil's Thumb was really bad for a lot of people, like that kind of section, Devil's Thumb to Swinging Bridge to Forest Hill. I think there was a lot of struggling kind of throughout the entire field, front to back of the pack, which is like through that new burn scar. And on a hot year, I think it was very evident how bad that section is now. And you're kind of, you don't have, you're seeing crew, but you're not seeing crew, like figuring out strategies to really take care of yourself in that section, I think is going to be a big turning point, a big unlock for a lot of people in the coming years.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think what was really cool too to see is that I think people found this new level of pushing themselves where they might have been feeling pretty crummy. Like one of my favorite quotes from Rachel was like, "This is really hard, but I feel okay and I'm going to keep going." And I think a lot of people, while they're figuring out this race and they're like cooling off and they're eating, they're able to like channel this new level of push where they're like, okay, I'm just accepting that this is going to be really hard, but I can do it and I can push. And I just think that like the sport hasn't seen that from like 20 women before. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I was chuckling to myself thinking about like nutrition. And if podcasts ever did this, I just want to say, hey, you're about an hour into this podcast and you're probably doing this on your long run. Have you eaten yet? How much fluids have you had? This is your little in podcast like reminder. Have you eaten yet? Big dogs got to eat. And speaking of big dogs got to eat, it seems like we dealt with a lot of tummy troubles out there from many people in the field. There's a lot of puke and rally going on, very literally, for folks. I know that you said that Rachel's stomach was kind of off as well. What did you guys do to troubleshoot that over the course of the event.
We played around with some salt, with some water, realized that maybe too much salt wasn't the answer, and then switched to Roctane. And she just hammered like the carbohydrate drink at the aid stations, like
Nice.
2 bottles worth every 5 miles. I think she just was, I mean, it's hot. Like you need a lot of fluids. And so I think like that was the solve for her. Her stomach kind of re-established itself online after we did that for some consecutive aid stations. And it was really cool to see it turn around that way. But yeah, it's like throw a lot of fluids at it, because normally the reason the stomach turns is dehydration in most cases. Again, it's not always, but I feel like dehydration plays a very big role.
Yeah, totally. It is. These hot races are particularly brutal. I'm wondering if anyone has any favorite storylines that came out of the race, because there are going to be a lot of post-race recaps of this thing. And it's like, there are things that we're excited about that maybe other people won't highlight. And I'm wondering, if you had any storylines that either you had going in that you were excited to follow, or coming out the other side, things that really stood out to you that made you very excited.
There's so many. And so I'm waiting to see what you're going to say. I'm going to plug 2. One is a little selfish because he's my athlete, but I love him. But Carlos Osoyo was on the wait list for many, many, many years, finally got in this year. He's a father. He is a husband. He has a full-time job, and he can't tolerate crazy high volume. So we run very low mileage, between 40 and 50 miles a week, knowing very well that his quads will probably be a little sore during the race, right? Because it's just hard to get that much vert in that little miles, especially he lives in Texas, and in the area in Texas he lives doesn't have a ton of climbing. So we're kind of like really, really like just going the bare minimum here, knowing that it's going to take a lot of mental courage to get through the race. He also rolled with a lot of punches. We were going to try to meet him to crew him at Green Gate. We couldn't do that. So him and his pacer made it to Pointed Rocks. Me being an absolute savage, was supposed to meet him there. I have not slept through an alarm in probably a decade, especially one set for 8 a.m. I didn't wake up.
Oh my God.
Felt horrible. His pacer rallied, was such an awesome guy. Carlos also was like, it's okay. I wasn't even 100% banking on it, because I just was like, who knows what's happening today? Like, so many things are unexpected. I'm just going to keep going. He's a champion. Like, I met him at Pointed. My goodness. I met him at Roby Point with his family. We ran him in, got him in during golden hour, 29:49. And It was the most magical thing I've ever experienced. Like, if I want to go do this race again, part of me is like, I want to finish during golden hour. Like, that is so amazing. Like, everyone is there.
And you have to realize too that there's it's probably 60 to 70 people finished during golden hour. I
calculated it. From 28 to 30 was over 80 people.
Yeah. It's
wild. That's a third of the field.
Yeah. I was in the booth doing commentary during much of golden hour, and it's like there are 4, 5, 7 people on the track. There are 20 runners between Roby Point and the finish line at any given time. Like, it is just an all-out
so cool
rush to get to the track, and it's really, really cool. Like, I cried a lot in the final 2.5 hours of the race.
Too. And I cried for your athlete now I didn't know it was your athlete, but they were running so fast.
They had 12 minutes to get from Roby Point to the finish line. And if you're on 30-hour pace, they say that you should have 22 minutes to get there. And
they got there in 12 and a half minutes. Oh God, it broke my heart because they were hauling.
Yeah. So this is the visually impaired athlete, Will, who's from the Bay Area. Outstanding guy. And I held it together through the final 600 meters, 700 meters with him. I ran out of the booth, ran up out of the track, ran up the road. Someone was like, he's coming. And I started crying, and then held it together, ran in with him and his pacers, and then was fine at the finish line. But then Kim, his amazing partner, fiance, she paced in the final 20 miles, got in, basically let herself get dropped going up Roby Point. Was she was like, you got to go, Will, leave me. You got to go.
He was by himself.
And so just over the very top, and he's got some peripheral vision. So he's in the daylight, particularly not on, if he's not in a variable light, he's solid. They right at the very top, basically he got handed over to fresh runners from his crew who sprinted in with him. A board member helped sprint Kim through the shortcuts to get to the track so she could be there. And I'm totally fine until I hug her, and then she starts crying, and then I start crying, and I'm like, Kim, you like, and it, like she feels bad because she's like, what could I have done more? Like I could have pushed him harder. And I'm like, no, you guys pushed so hard. And he was like, Corinne, you'd be so proud of me for troubleshooting so much of yesterday. And that's like the thing is that so many athletes had hard days, troubleshot so hard and like never gave up, like kept pushing. Ryan Thrower finished in just over 26 hours. I had guys who 100% are fit enough to run 20 hours, finish in like 27, like 25 to 27 hours. And it's just like, you get it done because this is your like one shot at this race, you know, like Will got into the lottery, just like any of us. It's your one shot at the race and you're going to give it everything you have. And that was just, I knew when I saw his splits in the morning that it was going to be really, really tight. And there was a moment when he hadn't split the Ruby Point yet where I was like, okay, that's it. And then all of a sudden for him to push and dig so hard in the final like 1.2 miles was pretty insane. Because it's not downhill from Ruby Point. Like you just like climb out of there. So it was super impressive, but it was impressive for everyone. And I said this in the broadcast. It doesn't matter if you finished in 14 hours and 13 minutes, like Jim Walmsley, or if you finished in, there were people that came into the track, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes after the cutoff. They made it. They made it 100 miles. They made it from Olympic Valley to the track at Placer High School, independent of what that day looked like. You got it done. You got a hard, hot, nasty, very powerful race. I got to meet the aid station captain who carried Tony's bib. Tony was an athlete who passed away kind of in the final month leading up to Western States, who had been working for a long time to get into the race, passed away very suddenly. Lauren carried his bib for the duration of the race. So we technically had 376 starters because we had Tony's bib out on course and like got to meet Lauren and his crew after he finished carrying Tony's bib. It's just like, what is this sport? Like, that's what we're like. The sport is crazy. It's mind blowing. I got to watch Carolina, one of our favorite guests of all time, Rubio McRae.
Other good storyline.
Finish in, 28 and a half hours, like getting it done. It just like the race weekend was magical. Again, 14-13 to over 30 hours.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with the whole thing.
Corinne, I have a question for you based off of your closeness with Western States. Is there a world in which your athlete actually finished sub 30? Like if they went by bib time?
Oh, I'm sure he was sub 30 because I'm sure he was one of the final ones out of it.
So why does that not count?
I don't know.
I don't understand that because Carlos for sure did not cross the start line when Jim did.
Yeah, no, 100%, right?
So
like those people that are tight.
I understand why they get DQ'd if it's actually bib time is not 30 hours. And so maybe I feel like it's a little grimy.
You can feel like Craig, there's video of like Craig watching us come onto the track and he's just like, oh no. Like that's like Ash Bartholomew last year, right? Like,
but I guess like why not make it 30 hours and 2 minutes and then look at bib times before you DQ someone.
Yeah. And they don't like, it's not like a DQ. Like you're not like, they're not being like, you
don't get the
out.
buckle.
But you don't get the buckle. And the buckle.
You did finish in 30.
I feel like I would give everyone buckles.
I think if you like if you clocked in 30 hours, I would give you a buckle.
I'd give you a buckle too.
My other favorite storyline, just one more, and I think you're going to agree with me on this one. Did you read Sally's post after the race? Oh my God, I start crying.
We've had Sally McRae on the podcast as well.
Oh my God. Yeah. So like Sally, in a nutshell, her day did not go as planned. But she got to finish it with her daughter, Mackenzie, who is, if any of you follow Sally, you probably know she's attending NAU this fall to pursue her own running career. And Sally basically was like, I'm passing the baton to you, Mackenzie girl. Like, can't wait to see what happens. And it gave me so many chills. Like it's giving me chills right now. It's so sad because it's like, yeah, it is kind of the passing of the baton. And I don't know if that means like Sally is giving up her running career, but like it just felt very symbolic and made me feel really like happy and sad for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of feels and a bunch of this lives online. So if you haven't experienced Golden Hour, if you want to see Sally's finish, if you want to watch any of that, it's all the live stream exists online. You can hear us absolutely lose our minds in the booth. It's pretty next level. But I think we'll close it out there for Western States so we can hit some society slams before we let you all go. But before we do that, we got to talk a little bit again about the snacks that are keeping us going, the snacks, the electrolytes that kept me physically going on the live broadcast. Again, over from the feed. Just want to give a quick shout out to their new flavors of their hydration mix. That is the salted margarita, which is like it's just an electrolyte drink mix. Super, super tasty. Was drinking a lot of that and a lot of the cucumber mint hydration mix all weekend long in the hot temperatures. And I'm sold. The new flavors are delicious.
Yeah, sounds like a good flavor for the hot
Yeah.
heat.
Yeah, I dug it. Keely, you threw in like a bajillion society slams.
I cut it down to 5.
Okay. Kick us off.
All right. We have Ingrid from Norway here. I love your podcast and especially how you focus on nutrition and promoting female athletes. I started running longer distances a couple of years ago and have qualified for the OCC this year after being third in the 50K Nice by UTMB. I'm 44 years old, am CEO of an offshore wind company, baller, have 2 kids, and I'm taking hormone treatments after breast cancer 4 years ago. Sending love towards you. So glad that you have, endured that journey so far. And I always listen to your podcast when I'm out traveling with work. I just wanted to say that you are a great inspiration and also for us non-pros. I also wanted to share this clip with you. If you haven't seen it already, have you eaten yet? It will be music to your ears. And I watched this YouTube video and it's really, really funny. We will link it in the show notes. And if I'm savvy enough, I'll even like play it in this feed. So stay tuned.
Love it. Hillary, there's a Brooks adjacent question in number 2.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see if I can do this. Okay. Hello, big fan of the pod and all 3 of you rad ladies. I was listening to the latest episode today and I was super intrigued by the sports bra research your last time, but that was some really interesting research I pulled up. My question is related, but not totally on topic. I used to work in the run specialty in Reno. I was told by Brooks rep that you're supposed to change your sports bra about as often as you change your shoes, 300 to 500 miles. Oh my God, face emoji. I'm wondering what your thoughts are and if you've heard similar adage. And so we can maybe just start there. What do you guys think?
I've been told that your sports bra shouldn't have a birthday. And I definitely have many sports bras that have endured many, many, many birthdays, but I get where this is coming from. And it's because like the elastic breaks down effectively.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah. We studied this and it breaks down with even just like the first wash sometimes. So
yeah. And I think
need to replace.
Totally. And it's like the elastic band, right? Like, so we're talking about the research of like the tightness of the strap around your actual chest, but this is probably also has to do with the support and coverage it has for actual like jostling of the breast tissue. So I'd suggest changing them as well. So shout out to Brooks, and Brooks has a really cool, like, you don't have to have someone physically, you can measure yourself to try to find out your appropriate, size. So I've checked that out on the Brooks Bra Finder, website. And then the other one, she says, who can afford that? I mean, we can't afford it. I think it's important, but maybe let's look for discount codes. And 2, it's hard to find a bra that I love, i.e. the compression is enough and isn't chafe, and curious to hear your thoughts. So I guess that's more my thing. Brooks has a bunch of different bra types. I don't love every single bra type on there but like they do have some for every, I think, body, like, big breasted women and small breasted women. So I think you can find something on there. And they make it really easy to find the appropriate size. So I would definitely check it out there. And once you find a brand or something that you love, discount shopping, go find that.
But I mean, I think it's very valid. It's like affording, a bra plus probably 4. So you don't have to do laundry every single day times 4 times a year. Doesn't really, that does add up, especially if you're a family or a mother. So I get it. It's a lot. There are some initiatives going on at certain brands. I'm not going to name them because they're kind of under the radar right now, to build a high support, cost-effective bra. We're going to see if that works. Again, it's still going to be a cost, but I know a lot of brands are trying to create a lower cost entry bra that actually provides adequate support. And so hopefully that innovation still continues. And hopefully in the next couple of years, there will be some bras at lower price points. Another lady did say that the Brooks 3 Pocket Sports bra is a bra that they really like. They don't have any under boob chafing from it, and they do a band size and a cup size instead of like small, medium, large, and it's high necked, so there's not like a lot of cleavage risk. And then there's also like pockets in the back. So that was one recommendation we got. Again, we're going to dive into bras, I think, in the future. I kind of love nerding out about bras, so I think we could kind of do a little deep dive into like bras that are going to be good for people of different breast size, and we'll stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we should have PhD Kip on the
I think so.
on the pod. That'd be super sick. Sweet.
Yeah.
I'm going to dig into number 3 here, and that's listening to you guys talk about all the moms in Western states. The coolest study ever would be to do a focus group with them asking about how their OB-GYN provider counseled them on return to sport postpartum and whether they felt heard and are supported by their provider. I'm an OB, and there is such limited data, it's absurd. And so many providers are clueless when it comes to returning to sport. But side note, love your guys' podcast. I think the inspiration I've gotten for the projects I am doing kind of came from you guys. She's doing a survey study on limitations on exercise in pregnancy, and another on how providers here in Hawaii, where this writer lives, counsel patients on exercise in pregnancy, which is mega cool. You'll have to keep us posted on how those studies go, because they're incredibly fascinating. And you're right, there is a lot of women exercising while pregnant and getting pregnant while exercising. Well, not exactly while exercising, I guess, but like, like pregnant women exercise, women who exercise get pregnant. It's really important to study them. Please study them. So that's really cool that this listener is actually getting it done. And then I was gonna say, Keely wrote in that we had approximately 333,000 people write in asking for more shirts. Keep your eyes peeled. We're working on getting the initiative really based out, because that's the thing. It's like, we want to do this right. We want to do it with the right support system in place. We knew that this could happen at Western States with this idea of like it taking off really fast. So we're working on getting an online system set up, but also an online hub for what the project and scope of the project actually is. So stay patient. Also, if you're a female web developer, if you're a female website developer and you're like really jazzed, please reach out to me. Because we have some opportunities that I would like to discuss with you. So again, if you are a female website developer, this comes out on Wednesday. So on Thursday, I want a bajillion DMs. Please reach out, because I need help, because I don't code. Okay.
Nice.
Last one, but not least, we have some people asking about the Oura Ring research on perimenopause. We just want to reach out to you all and say they have not released the study sign up yet. They're probably a little delayed. They said they would do it in May. It is now July. They're probably just a little delayed. We will keep you guys updated as soon as we see study details. But thank you all for being stoked about that study. That's awesome. And we'll keep you posted.
Oh, we have to give one more shout out. Keely, are you wearing your sick friendship bracelet?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Hillary, we're sorry that you weren't in person, but we got a listener gave us friendship bracelets, and then we were out of t-shirts and she made her own.
Yeah. She's a
Oh my God.
Ada Chapman.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really
that's
sweet.
So cool.
Yeah.
They're in our colors.
Pink, blue, and more pink.
Oh, I love it. Oh, do I get one? No.
I'm sure we can make this happen. But yeah, thanks for enjoying or not enjoying our Western States Lavaredo life update. This week, our brains are all talked out. Thank you for being patient with our delay on releasing this so that we could all be in a place with stable-ish internet and have slept a little bit since returning from racing and Western Statesing. So I guess until next time, we'll see you on the trail.